All right, welcome everybody to another product spotlight on Dave Cooper Live, where we bring you the people, the products, and the processes building it better. And today we ask, can you imagine cities built in days instead of years? By developing turnkey operations, transportable factories producing easy to assemble building components, today we learn how QB plans to enable the world's most efficient, precise, repeatable, dynamic, and sustainable systems for the construction industry. Driven to deliver the offsite construction process on site with the lowest coefficient of skilled labor required to produce buildings quickly, QB promises to deliver lower costs, a smaller carbon footprint, while building a better quality product in less time. So today we are going to welcome co-founder of QB, Alexandra Campbell. But first, we always have to thank our sponsors because they are the ones that allow us to bring you all of this amazing content and where the future of construction is going so we can build it better. So let's give a big shout out to our sponsors. Forward Solutions Group is successfully driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Are you looking to start a factory, optimize your existing factory, streamline your production, or take your team to the next level? Whatever your needs are, Forward has a solution for you. Reach out to Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com. Halleck Ltd. has a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing and producing innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the United States and the world. Check out their machine buyer's guide for offsite modular construction or fast build construction with light steel for framing. Go to their website, halleckltd.com. All right. Thank you again to our sponsors. We cannot do this without them. All right. So today is going to be an exciting conversation. In fact, more than an exciting conversation. This is something we have been looking at and talking about for decades now. Can we do factories on site to make the process smoother, seamless, more economical, and do it in a way to where you don't have as much skilled labor for the efficiency? Well, we're going to learn a little bit more about it today. And today's going to set us up for something that's coming down the pipeline. So stay tuned. Let's bring Alex on. Alex, how are you?
Dave, good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for having me. Big fan of the show.
Hey, I appreciate it, Alex. So I'm excited about today's show. I even told you offline. I said, all right, this is awesome. I love what you guys are doing. But before we get into what QB is all about, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and maybe throw the co-founder in there as well. We want to give props to both of you on this show. And then we'll hop into what QB is, but you only have 2 minutes to do it. So go for it.
I'll be super quick. So I come from real estate, a real estate family specifically. So I've touched buildings my whole life in some form or capacity. I have an engineering background, also a business background. And I always joke I couldn't decide what to do, whether it was real estate or technology. It was always kind of a world I floated between. And I've touched, like I said, real estate, private equity, development, have worked in many different asset classes, and have also, by the way, it's a world I still touch, and then have also grown operating companies that were backed by venture but sat on top of real estate. So think companies like WeWork or Lifehouse. So I've developed this niche of understanding the world in between. So understanding real estate, traditional real estate investment development, but also how to grow a technology business and how to have it be backed by venture, in the right form of cost of capital. My partner, a lot more impressive than I am, Oleg Kondrashov. He is a deep tech entrepreneur, multiple deep tech businesses that he's taken to profitability. His world is writing books about scaling deep tech teams, building assembly lines, robotics, hardware. And before this, he had a 200-person engineering team that would catalyze IP and then mass produce it for big corporates. So he's an incredible individual, very seasoned, and probably the best person in the world to be building what we're building.
All right, Alex. So you got the background, you got the financial background, you got the data and the know-how background on the software side. Where did this idea come from? Like, did you just wake up one morning and said, hey, the industry's broken and I think we can fix it? How did it all come about? And then let's jump into what QB is after that.
Funny enough, I grew up in Russia until I was 8, and I think that was maybe the first form of prefab. The Soviet Union used to have these concrete prefab buildings. They were very ugly. They were sturdy, but they were ugly, and they were all the same. There was just literally hundreds of these 9-story buildings in a single city. That was kind of my first exposure. And then I remember learning specifically about Katera when I was at WeWork. We did quite a bit of diligence on them. And since I've, joined development organizations that have grown development platforms. And 3 years ago, I tried to be a customer of several prefab modular 3D printing companies. And a lot of the logic wasn't adding up to me. Coincidentally, at that same time, I met Oleg, who was building himself a headquarters for his previous business, started working, day in, day out with construction companies, and realized that his background is the solution to what is so dysfunctional about the ecosystem that he was working with. So he started spending a ton of engineering hours with his existing team. There was 200 engineers at the time, trying to see what they could do differently relative to what exists today. And Kubi emerged as this thing. Before we ever went to market, we've put in about 100,000 engineering hours, and we came up with the solution that we came up with, and think we're moving in the right direction. So no, we did not wake up doing this. This came out of a random, serendipitous moment.
Yeah, sure. So tell me exactly what QB is. I'm going to share the website while you're talking about it as well, just so people can see it. So walk us through what is QB?
Yeah. So, and just a caveat, we show 1% of what we're doing, and we'll talk a lot about, what we're doing more on here versus what we show. But to keep it really, really short, Kubi, which is what we are in our company, we're setting the stage to commercialize hundreds of mobile microfactories that are erected on or near construction sites to enable developers, builders, or anyone else have the ability to build better buildings effectively with less labor. And really, we exist to try to reduce the labor equation, specifically the skilled labor coefficient that exists in construction today, which I argue is kind of the root of all evil of why we build less and why there's a huge need for different building archetypes today relative to our population size.
So let's walk through what the process of this is. Give me kind of the overview of, all right, how long have you been in business now? This has already been tested. Yeah. So you have product out there that you're testing and working with, and therefore lays, what
Yep.
comes, next month, and you'll be able to tell us a little bit more. But walk us through this process. Who's your customer, and what exactly are you doing?
Yeah, and I promised you'll get some interesting stuff next month, and I think it'll be pretty exciting, and you'll actually get to see what I'm talking about versus just some words. But to keep it super high level, we triangulate somewhere between McDonald's, Amazon's last mile logistics, and Hadrian, which, for example, is maybe a bad example, but it's a darling in the venture deep tech ecosystem. They have these they have these micro factories that effectively build, aerospace parts, but locally in a bunch of them. So we triangulate somewhere there. And what I mean by that is, let's take the mobile microfactory approach. We literally bring lean manufacturing processes on site or near the construction site. So if you think about a conveyor belt process, we bring it on site. There's a lot more that goes into it, but that's pretty much what it is. We show up with a bunch of containers, they form a perimeter, we inflate this non-pressurized dome, and boom, and 8 weeks later, you have a factory that is fully operational, producing 400,000 square feet of a kit of parts. Different kit of parts to assemble different building archetypes. 90% reduction in skilled labor requirements to produce those 400,000 square feet. When I say McDonald's, and why that's a good example of where we triangulate, is we don't ever want to be a developer. We don't want to be a GC. We're never going to be better than, incumbent GC or an incumbent local developer. So for that reason, we made a conscious decision to effectively create a platform, both hardware and software, hardware being our mobile microfactory, everything that goes inside of it, the kit of parts that produce out of it, and all of the IP around that, coupled by software that allows you to structure a lot of pre-development processes, but then also processes around actually running the factory efficiently in a turnkey manner. And when I say McDonald's, I mean that because I'm a pretty crappy cook. I tap out in an omelet, but McDonald's has spent hundreds of thousands of hours iterating on their hardware, software, processes, hiring standards to allow someone like me to be able to run a super P&L efficient restaurant, having no prior F&B experience. We've to date spent about 170,000 engineering hours, 3 years, into developing a platform that effectively allows a developer or a builder to take our technology and use it. And we hand it over, and we don't mind handing it over. So that's why it kind of looks and feels like McDonald's. So that's kind of what we do.
So with this, how customizable is it per developer? I mean, do you have to design a kit of parts for each customer that you're working with for their project? And what are the limitations here?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say the one hard thing about there's a lot of hard things actually, as you know, but folks
Yep.
have tried to industrialize construction for 50 years now, and we can talk about why I think it hasn't happened and why the industry hasn't captured more market share. But when we were developing this, if you're developing a space company, you have infinite parameters of how to innovate because it's unprecedented. The thing of construction is there's a lot of regulation, code compliance, et cetera. So everything you're innovating has to be in the box of IBC, International Building Code, right? So everything we've developed, the end product intentionally looks, feels, using maybe some alternative materials to traditional construction. And that's because we want inspectors to feel comfortable inspecting this, which we've done. But the process of delivery is really what we're changing. And because the kit of parts and one intention for us is to be highly customizable, it's a set kit of parts, but parametrically it can be designed in different permutations. So different building archetypes, different designs, obviously more limiting than traditional construction because traditional construction today is a custom process. It doesn't look like, a conveyor belt that Toyota employs. I think the solution's somewhere in between because we still require certain customization around different building archetypes, but we can't have them be all, a black Ford coming off the conveyor belt.
Right.
Right now, we're focused on single family. So we're focused on build to rent for sale. We work with builders, developers, private equity groups that own manufacturing businesses. But really, our system is not limiting. We have different technologies. We call them V1, V2, V3. V1 is what I'm describing now. V2 is a second phase rollout. We can do up to 15 stories. We use concrete and steel. But we can do anything from a hospital to a school to a military barrack. It's not limiting to that regard, but it's all for the purpose of reducing skilled labor in our process.
So is it wood or steel construction?
We don't like wood. Wood has a lot of standard deviation. It's a very, I think the best way to put it, sensitive material, because when you talk about automation and certain process automation, you can't have standard deviation be a factor because if you're going end to end from raw material input to finished good output and extending your assembly line or call it your lean manufacturing all the way through the pad of where you're assembling the actual building, wood becomes a bit sensitive. We use wood in some pieces of our process, but we really like steel. And because we've brought down that 70% of which $1 it costs to build being labor by a factor of 7 to 10 times, depending on the instance, and it's not always the most linear thing, but it allows us the ability to afford using higher quality materials like steel. The other reason why we don't like wood is, as you know, it goes like this in terms of price quite often. Because it's not locally available wherever you need it, it kind of limits your just-in-time manufacturing as well. So steel is a lot more consistent. It's widely available. It can be imported anywhere on a widely available basis, or it can be local. So we like steel.
Talk to me a little bit about these factories that are going to be on site, as you say, MMF, right? Mobile micro factories is what you guys are calling them. What is the size? Like, what's the footprint of one of these mobile micro factories? And does it vary depending on the size of projects and how much product one wants to put out? Walk us through.
So we have two versions, and we call one of them optimistic, one of them pessimistic. What I mean by that is when you go to a place like Puerto Rico, it's not a lot of the intention is to be able to use raw materials, and what we chose is a raw material selection to be able to plug in from local vendors, local businesses, the supply chain that already exists. That's optimistic. When you go to highly developed markets, that exists, and all the material selection we chose is meant to plug into local ecosystems. When you go to markets like Puerto Rico, for example, your supply chain is a lot more disrupted. So what we solved around that input is we have a perimeter, and there's a bunch of containers effectively around the perimeter that house 2 to 3 months worth of the materials. And they're like printer cartridges that get replaced. So we can be self-sufficient or we could be non-self-sufficient. And that varies on the footprint. So anywhere from 1 to 2 acres is enough to go put up a mobile microfactory. We can put it up anywhere. We don't need, foundation. We can just take a raw piece of land. As long as there's hookups, we can hook up a mobile microfactory. So about 1 to 2 acres.
So about 1 to 2 acres for the factory. And then walk me through the process. Like, how does this all come to me? Say, all right, Alex, this is a great idea. I got 1,000 houses in my development. I need to build, and I need to build them fast. I like what you're doing. I want a factory. Ship it to me.
Yeah, no, simple, hard, but simple. So the reason why we partner initially with the developer via SPV is because we want to feed the factory with initial demand. So we generally work with folks that have about 200. We'll talk about single family homes. I like to talk about square footage, but I think that's more
Sure.
understandable. We like to work with folks that have at least 150 homes in their pipeline for the next 1, 2, 3 years. When a developer launches one of these with us, they're feeding the initial demand. But soon, with time, the proof of concept starts feeding other locals, other developers that want to work with the factory. The beauty of the factory being extremely low capex, and that's part of the reason why I think a lot of folks haven't scaled in the space, is because you know some factories are 25 to 100 million. You need a lot of throughput to make those economics work. We have low capex factories; they're sub $10 million, very comfortably. Once you lever up, that's very little equity to actually put in. The payback on one of these is 2 to 3 years for a developer, and the payback is roughly around 150,000 to 200,000 square feet, which, you come from this world, that's not a
Yep.
lot. There's
Right.
quite a few people that make that work. So generally, that's how, we launch. We basically, from the moment we talk to the moment you're excited to the moment you give us a deposit and we sign contracts. Right now, our lead time is 9 to 12 months. In about 3 years, we'll be producing 20 factories per year, and the lead time will drop to about 6 months. Once you prep the land, there's certain processes that start to happen. Those processes start from hiring a CEO for that SPV all the way through hiring and training the unskilled labor. For example, these mobile microfactories live in a digital twin, so an Unreal Engine. We use
Mhm.
quite a lot of Unreal Engine. It's a gaming software that now is being applied in real world physics. And a good example of that, I don't want to show you ours, but if you go and Google NVIDIA BMW, what they've done with Unreal Engine to show and basically run a simulation of their $3 billion plant,
Mhm.
real world physics, real world application. We have the same thing, which means we can start training unskilled labor months before they show up to their station to perform a job. But anyways, we start trading. There's a whole kind of kickoff process and onboarding. When it comes to hookups and utilities done for that piece of land where the factory is initially launching, we
Mhm.
literally send it over. It takes about 2 months to set up, and it's up and running. So I'm not going to disclose how we set it up because that's what we'll disclose on one of our next calls, and it'll be super fun. But it'll click very quickly.
Yeah. So I mean, with the setup though, I mean, it's a pretty simple setup, is what I'm understanding overall.
This
Like
is
it's
this is a moving. It's a non-permanent
yeah.
structure. It's like a moving circus. It's light industrial zoning. If it's external to the construction site, if it's on the construction site, the beauty is it's a piece of equipment. That's
Yep.
it.
Got it. Got it. So I don't know if you're going to answer this or not, but Joel, who is no stranger to what you're talking about, has a question, and I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Joel says, "What is your software? Design, supply chain optimization, CM?"
We built everything in-house entirely. We have no third parties. So all of our software includes everything from pre-development all the way through the actual processes to run the operations of the factory, all the way through the back of house, all the way through the steps to go assemble on the pad. So everything is entirely in-house.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate it. He also made another comment here. He said, "Big fan leveraging technology to unlock decentralized manufacturing, supply chain, and localized assembly. But the proof is in the pudding. It's all about the design of components and how technology is utilized to provide a file to factory and DFMA approach." You agree with that?
Yeah,
Yep.
100%. And part of what we're doing is I'll explain it in an analogy, and I'll credit this to my co-founder who likes to use this analogy. Seemingly, an airplane is a pretty simple thing. There's a cockpit, there's wheels, there's wings. But if someone were to go build a plane, it's a lot more complex than that. What I mean by that is there's nothing super proprietary about what we've done per se. There's no individual piece that's this magic orb that if someone else were to have it, they'd be able to do it. It's all the things that we're doing at once that make what we're doing really unique. And part of that is taking off the shelf materials that exist, taking off the shelf processes, and it's putting it under one system. That system being a very unique, complicated yet simple lean manufacturing process, but on site or closer to site,
Yeah.
because the off-site process is a controllable, and construction will never be a controllable on site. So it's about bringing those two worlds closer to collision.
Sure. Love it. Diego Rivera also says it is all about understanding the process. The secret is in the drawings, and that's somebody who knows. Diego's huge in the steel fabrication world. So love it. Hey, Diego, good to hear from you. So, all right, let's talk about this a little bit more. So, from a developer standpoint, though, do you work with my existing plans, or do I got to work within a set of parameters that you guys have set up?
So one thing I saw very limiting as a developer trying to work with modular companies, I think it works in hotels when you have consistently a repeatable
Yeah.
box that is volumetric and you stack it. When you get to other asset classes, it's a bit more nuanced. So our intention was always to have a high MRL,
Mhm.
manufacturing readiness level, but also a high level of customization. The way we've kind of engineered that is, yes, we're still a grid-based system, so the kit of parts work on a grid base, so that's the limitation. But in most cases, you give us your plans, and plus minus, we can turn out the same plans and make them work. Don't give us a stadium. Don't give us a curved structure. Don't give us something weird and nuanced. It's probably better off to do via traditional construction. But for the most part, we can
Sure.
do hundreds of different iterations of a building.
Labor. You keep mentioning unskilled labor. Why is it going to be unskilled if the manufacturing is happening on site?
Okay, so I think I break that question up into two ways. Um, for us, offsite is still on site. So let's just talk about offsite is in our mobile factory. So offsite, lean manufacturing by definition is breaking up the jobs in such a simple manner that anyone can do them, and there's no one unskilled laborer that sticks to one specific station. They can
Mhm.
intertwine stations because say there's 100 processes and only 60 unskilled laborers. That means each laborer has to do more than one job, which is what we're gunning for. And the
Yeah.
software we've built that at any point, any unskilled labor can be deployed to where the task is needed. Okay, so that's one. It's unskilled because of the processes we built offsite, on site, to be able to deliver on those specific jobs. Um, on site, we have about 4 to 5 people. And the way we've built our end product, the way it comes together makes it extremely simple. A week ago, we built a house in 2 days. We took our engineers and they did all of the electric work. They've never done electric work in their life.
Mhm.
So it's about creating the right steps, pre-cutting things the right way, and making them in quotes click together the right way is what we're gunning after. That's why we don't need any skilled labor.
When you say 2 days, I mean, is that just framing or is that wiring,
No, no,
sheetrock, like finished?
pull it, pull it to your finish. It was a tiny little case study, but nonetheless, that was fully
Yeah.
where we're gunning after is to be able to produce a single family home in about 1900 labor hours. For reference, the industry is about 7 to 8 times more than that today.
Sure. Sure. All right. So we talked a little bit offline about this. Typically the developers, the investors out there that do developments, they don't want factories, right? This has been one of their things because, when times get hard, they dump labor, they dump land, and they don't want to keep factories. So you keep mentioning the McDonald's approach as an example, and you know that's a unique approach. Is that the same format and concept that you're looking to do with a developer?
Yeah, very similar. So we like to think of ourselves as partners
Hmm.
to a developer. So we partner on a factory together in which the majority partner happens to be that developer. Like I said, we're never going to be better than an incumbent GC at doing what they do. We're never going to be better than a local developer because real estate, unfortunately, it's a local game. It's a local man's world or
Yeah.
woman's world. Um, so we like to partner, and the structure that we've built is really about repeating hundreds of mobile micro factories around the world. That's where 170,000 engineering hours went into, not necessarily a case study. Everyone loves to put up a case study and show it to the zine, but
Hmm.
people forget that needs to be repeated in a cost-effective way that's cheaper for the industry than today's practices. Otherwise, there's no incentive to adopt something new. And it's about repeating that platform hundreds of times is what we're focused on. So yeah, we for the most part partner with developers. The incentive for them is, like I said, it's a profitable manufacturing business on a standalone basis, but also
Hmm.
the end sale of that product, which happens to be a building to the developer, is also net cheaper than traditional construction.
Okay.
The reason why they're excited is because it's two ways to make money. And also the way we do it is incredibly turnkey. And like I said, McDonald's is a good example because someone that doesn't know how to make an omelet can run a really efficient, P&L efficient restaurant. And we've done the same thing by building a process that's turnkey to a developer, and we hand over that process and that turnkey nature to them.
Got it. So you'll have a team of people that help them get initially set up and train. Is that how it would work?
Better example. Marriott Hotel is owned by a real estate owner,
Yep.
but Marriott helps them hire the staff that's under that P&L, helps
Yep.
them train the staff, helps them run the processes. Like I said, we're moving to a point where there's 70 cameras inside one of these mobile micro factories. Soon AI plays an equation. Soon
Yep.
algorithms that help you run the process play an equation. So we're trying to create a process, and that process over time will get better and better. No developer needs to step in and really be hands-on. We help them make sure it runs efficiently, and that's why we exist, and that's why we have a fee when these things turn on.
Yeah, for sure. So let me just jump back for just more of a basic question. The factory itself, how much of the work is done in the factory versus once you put the framing up on site? So the on-site versus off-site.
70 to 80%.
70, 80% is done in the factory. So wiring, plumbing, sheetrock's in, and then I'm assuming this is a paneled approach on site, or is it also a modular approach?
We don't do volumetric boxes. We're strictly against that, just hence why the logistics equation matters. I think if you break up existing solutions, there's 3D printing, prefab, modular. We are not modular. We are not 3D printing. Modular, volumetric modular is a tough value proposition because you have a gigafactory. If you've ever stepped foot into modular,
Yep.
it doesn't look like Toyota's conveyor belt, right? Lean manufacturing and TPS. And ultimately, you have to ship the good thousands of miles. Not exactly environmentally friendly. It's not practical. It's somewhat inefficient. So we tried to bring it closer. We do a kit of parts. So I'd say lean manufacturing via, I guess a prefab approach makes a lot more sense. But we try not to panelize things because inspectors have issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
If we decide to panelize, which our future versions do for multi-story,
okay,
because we're on site, we have a certain radius that an inspector can show up and go look at it. So we avoid that. But today, there's not necessarily a panelized approach because we don't want the regulatory hurdles around inspection and TCO.
Sure. Well, cool. I mean, it sounds like you're using quick connects, and are you using low voltage wiring, or is this stuff you can't tell me about? Clearly you're using wiring harnesses if a bunch of engineers put this together.
We pre-cut a lot of the electrical and relevant anything from the technicals. So think really skilled labor, stuff that's really expensive, plumbing, electric, HVAC, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We try to pre-cut essentially. So the way to think about it is our kit of parts, they're made up of things that happen on site. For example, we make our own windows. We'll take raw glass because the window that seemingly is behind you, for example, there's 10 people that have made a markup on it. We say, give us raw glass. We create the window frame ourselves. We'll make it, double pane ourselves. We try to limit that, 3-tier of markup, 4-tier of markup. There's certain things we make ourselves. There's certain things that get packed together like a toilet with the staged packs, we call them, which is like the pallet that goes to the site. So there's a combination of that.
Holy cow. So part of your manufacturing process is going to include the assembly of windows at the site, or is that what I'm understanding?
My co-founder is a crazy guy. Anytime he has a vendor and they give him a hard time, he makes it ourselves. So
yeah. But that sounds like Elon Musk, right? Isn't that what he does too? Like, all right, well, I'll just do it myself. And all for 10 million or less. This is what I think people need to really hear, right? I mean, there's a lot going into this. The machines and the robots, you said there's really nothing proprietary, but it sounds like
robotics is a funny one. Robotics sometimes is a bit of a buzzword in this industry in the sense that Elon Musk, good example. If you listen to Elon, he always says that they went robotics too quickly. It's first about optimizing human labor. Then once you can't optimize it to further efficiency, meaning draw down those required labor hours further, that's when you move to robotics. If you start with robotics day one, I mean, we're so early into this, we could be going in the wrong direction on a certain station, right? We might want to change that station entirely. That's a lot of CapEx that could be wrong. So for us, it's about creating stations and processes that optimize efficiently human labor first, then robotics happen. We only use robotics, say, for like rebar and welding, little things like that.
Got it. Very cool. All right. So Joel's calling BS. He says 130 hours for full design, CM, and supply chain op. If so, he will invest. By the way, if you're looking for an investor and you're doing what you say you want to do, Joel is somebody you definitely want to talk to. The guy's built and sold many companies.
I'm confused by 130 hours. I said from start to finish, 1,900 labor hours to effectively put together a home.
Yeah. There you go. So, Joel, if you could elaborate on that, which I'm sure he will. Diego Rivera says, empowering unskilled labor with an intelligent process and digital twins is the right path. Just remember, you still deal with humans. You need leadership to run these operations. And Diego runs a lot of factories and has done it around the world. So I take
So
his advice for sure.
Diego, there's a book my co-founder wrote that's quite good. He compares scaling deep tech teams, so specifically hardware, and he makes an analogy between vectors and physics. It's called The Human Vector. It's a pretty good read, and it's exactly about this.
Yeah.
So I implore you to take a look.
Perfect. Appreciate you, Diego, for chiming in today. All right, Alex, I know next month, right? That is next month, right? May's coming up. You're going to have a bigger announcement and something that you can talk a little bit more on the show. Can you give us a little overview of what that may be and what people should expect?
I think we can start showing some of the things I'm talking about, and I think that's where we're tracking, and we can get a bit more
Yeah.
details. Like I said, the industry talks a lot. We try not to talk too much. We'd rather show and then do, and that's why we stay quiet. And we're not naive as to how hard this is. So many folks have tried. So many dollars went into this. We think our approach to date has been going in the right direction. We've been efficient about it, but ultimately, it's about seeing, and that's where we want to get to before we get too loud.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I do appreciate that approach as well, because there is a lot of chatter out there. And I think that's where you get some skepticism coming in. So, all right. And you said you can come back on the show. Is there is there going to be something that we could show on location, or it's not going to be concept stuff? This is going to be operational stuff, you think?
I think it'll be fun to show you a digital twin. It's a lot more palatable to understand that way.
Yeah, sure, sure. Love it, love it. More sweat, less saliva is what you got to love these folks. More sweat, less saliva. Yeah, I know. Henry Mickelberg, Jen said crickets. That's somebody you want to hear about too. He's over in Europe and really into the automation and DFMA and all this stuff. Well, listen, Alec, for me personally, we need to do it better. And I think anybody out there, and I see Joel's things here. Let me do that real quick. Joel said, you said 130 hours engineering dev so far for parametric design, steel manufacturing, digital twin CM software, and house ERP and window manufacturing. AI self-learning you have done.
Sorry, I see what he's alluding to. Yeah, we're about 170,000 engineering hours, hence the 100 engineers working at this full time. So there's quite a bit of R&D that we're doing and a lot left to go. So that's why we're quiet.
There you go. Well, Joel knows something about parametric design as well, which is cool, and digital twins. I guess Joel knows something about everything. Sometimes he drives me nuts. He's like the Daseki guy, the Daseki's commercial. Anywho, there's only a few of them that I say that about. Joel is definitely one of them. What I was alluding to is this, Alec. I think that the most important thing is that we have people like yourself that are trying new things, putting yourselves out there from out of industry, some industry. You have some in industry knowledge and work. But I commend you, and I commend everybody that comes on this show, for trying to do something better, regardless of where you are with it today and where it goes. So I love it, and I look forward to hopefully celebrating your success next month too. If you're up for coming back on, I'd love to have you come back, and we'll show what you're talking about.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much. Really
Sound
appreciate
good?
it, Dave.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let me ask one thing. Jen has a comment here real quick. Has anyone poked around to buy QB for their own gain or take it off the market? That's a good question.
Yeah, we get inbound demand quite a bit. The value proposition makes a lot of sense. Today, we can build a single family home for about $110 a foot, which, if you understand the housing market, it's quite an interesting metric. That's not what we sell to a developer, but that's what the COGS are on our side. Right. That being said, we're going to market with about 4 groups right now. So things are happening in the background. We can't do more than that right now because we have to move our production facility to be able to do 20 factories a year where we're getting demand. But yes, in the next 12 to 18 months, soon you guys will be able to tour a real one of these, hopefully.
Excellent. Well, listen, appreciate that. Thanks for chiming in as well, Jen, Joel, and Mateo. I got to say hi to Mateo. Here's somebody, right? 2 26-year-olds started their own factory as well down in Louisiana. Boxy, what's up, Mateo? Good to see you. I'm glad you signed in today. For anybody else out there, if you're watching this after the live, put your comments in there. Please reach out to Alec. Ask him any questions you want. I'm sure they'll be checking these posts. And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're not following QB and Alec and what they're doing, you should be. You're wrong. These are people that are trying to do it better, just like Joel Hutchins, Diego, and some of the other ones that are commenting in the comments there, and Mateo. So with that said, don't go anywhere, Alec. I'll come back to you after the outro. But for the rest of you, we'll see you Friday, BS Friday, with Mark Bare Naked Willie. That's right, Bare Naked Willie himself. We'll be talking building science as we always do. And I will be off trout fishing in Pennsylvania this week. So you may see me Friday, or you might see somebody else. We'll see. Just have to tune in and find out. Outside of that, again, thanks to our sponsor, Alec. I'll come right back to you. The rest of you have an awesome Wednesday. You got 2 more days to build it better. So get out there and do it. We'll talk to you soon. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave.